Welcome to The Network, a modern podcast version of the Negro Motorist Green Book. I've had the chance to interview some of my favorite people. Every episode is designed to help our community navigate the funky four corners of life. We are here to help the physical, mental, spiritual, and financial health of Black people living in and traveling through America. Subscribe to The Network. You never know. You might need it.
That's the only thing. But we good.
Okay,
We
we're
gonna make
good. So,
my lighting looks okay on your end.
yeah, you're fine. You're
Okay.
absolutely fine. Okay, are you ready? You ready to do this?
Yes.
So I'm a Sonya Antoine.
Yes.
That's okay. All right,
That's okay.
because I jack up the other part of your name. So we're gonna we're just gonna not do that. All right. So check this out, y'all. We got another episode coming at you. So I like to give y'all a piece of a song before we get started. So today's quote comes to you from the great Curtis Blow. Breaks on a stage, breaks on a screen, breaks to make your wallet lean. Breaks run cold and breaks run hot. Some folks got them and some have not. But these are the breaks. You remember that song, you?
I remember it.
All right, everybody, listen.
I remember.
I'm your host, Michael Prejean. I got somebody here with us today that are going to help us break some things up in your life that we need to kind of break up and turn over. Okay, so listen, check this out, y'all. So I'm bringing somebody who is a master in her field. Okay, not only is she licensed, but today's guest is certified. You want to know what she's licensed and certified in? Okay, I'm glad you asked because I'm getting ready to tell you. She is a licensed professional counselor. She is a nationally certified counselor, a certified life coach, a certified youth mental health specialist, a certified grief informed professional, a certified transformational coach, a certified mindfulness and meditation coach. But that's not it. We got to keep going, y'all. I told y'all she's a master as well. So she's got her master's of business administration along with a human resource management certificate. She's got a master of science in psychology, right, in organizational leadership, and a master of science in clinical mental health counseling from Walden University. I want y'all to welcome those of you who are watching and listening. Sonya Antoine, the owner and CEO of Positively Affirmed Therapeutic Services. Sonya, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Michael, for having me join your podcast this evening. I am grateful and honored to be here as your guest today. So again, thank you.
I am so glad you're here because we're really going to help some people. So some of the things that I want to talk about this evening is something that I've been trying to get into the atmosphere for about 2 years now. So I always trust the time and I trust God's timing on everything. So we didn't rush it. So this is how I know that today is going to be some really, really good stuff. All right, Sonya. So before we do anything, if people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Okay, well, of course, you can go to my website, which is www.positively-affirmed-therapeutic-services.org. Now, that makes the difference. It's .org, not .com. Also, I am on Facebook at Positively Affirmed with Sonya Tesores, LPC, NCC, Certified Life Coach, and on Instagram at Positively Affirmed underscore Sonya.
Okay. All right. So we're going to drop all of that. We're going to put all that in the show notes. We're also going to put it on the screen so people who are watching, they'll be able to find you. All right, Sonya. The first thing we do here is we give flowers. We don't wait until people leave this earthly plane to give them their flowers. We like to give flowers while they are still here with us. So who are you giving flowers to today?
Oh my goodness. I would definitely say my mom, Philomena Antoine. Hey, mom. She probably won't ever see the podcast. I'm gonna have to show her because she's not tech savvy and she
Okay.
don't do social media. So my mom, she's an amazing woman. She really has helped to, you know, get me to this place. She's always supported me and supported my children on my journey to becoming all of those things you listed. And so I definitely say my mom.
Okay. Flowers from mom. Sonya, I want to ask you this question.
Mhm.
As I was reading your bio,
Okay.
um, I noticed that you are from Moraville.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I don't know where that is.
Okay.
Where is that?
So I always ask people if they know where Paragon is. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's the casino in Marksville. Yes.
Ah,
So
okay.
I am from Avals Parish. Moorville is actually a village. Back when
Okay.
I, yeah, back when I graduated high school some years ago, we had under 1,000 people there, right? And it has grown since I've left. It's been 20 plus years now, but we're a town near Marksville, about 10 minutes outside of Marksville.
Okay. So, and for people who don't know where Marksville is, what is the next? I don't know if there are any big cities in Louisiana, but what's the next big city for people who may not know where Marksville is?
Alexandria.
Okay. So we're talking about
So,
Sinla.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm so Moraville's a village. I want to know more about this village. Tell me, do you know the history of this village?
Well, it took me a while, I guess, because, back when we were coming up, unlike the kids these days, we were outside, we were playing
Hmm.
and stuff. And so I'm learning in my older years now that there were a lot of plantations in the area way back when. And we're known for the cotton gins.
Okay.
There was a lot of cotton fields in that area, hence the plantations. They used to pick cotton and things of that nature. In fact, I learned where my sister currently lives. It's some apartments that's surrounded by fields, and so they may plant corn or they may plant soybeans. But she says every now and then, when some women will come and look for artifacts because there was the plantation that was along those lines of where the apartments are now. So in my later years of life, I am, looking into this just to get more information on what that was like because I didn't know that growing up.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I guess being a history teacher, when you said that, my antenna kind of popped up, and I was like, oh man, that's probably a lot of history in that area. So that's good stuff. I'm gonna have to go and do a little bit of digging myself. Okay, so we just kind of took a little path off to the side. Me being curious about Moraville. So let's dive right in, Sonia. Lots of certifications, right? A licensed professional counselor. So what led you to where you are now? What led you to doing this work that you are currently doing?
So back in high school, I thoroughly enjoyed psychology and sociology. And so my senior year, early on, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to help people. And my senior year, I took a sociology and psychology class that like really said, this is it. So, okay, I'm going to school to be a psychologist. So I enrolled at USL and started on my journey of becoming a psychologist. And then I had a conversation with my mom, and she was like, oh, I don't know if you want to really do that. People are crazy. Somebody might try to kill you. So I think you need to go in the medical field. So what you think I did? Changed my major, got the newspaper out. Here I am trying to, figure it all out and winded up graduating with a general studies degree with emphasis on applied life sciences.
Okay.
And got a job working in the medical field. I worked for a Canadian ambulance for a few years before going back to get my master's in business, but still wasn't, where I really wanted to be. as far as my purpose, if
Uh-huh.
that makes
Uh-huh.
sense. So I found myself 7 months after graduating with that master's in business administration, re-enrolled in school for my psychology degree. So now I have this master's in psychology and I'm pumped because I'm going back to do what I wanted to do. And
Uh-huh.
then I learned, well, there's been some changes since you started out way back when. Now there's counseling degrees versus psychology degrees. And so I'm on the phone with the board here in Louisiana, and they're like, well, your degree doesn't have counseling in the title. So you need to talk to the psychology board. Call the psychology board. Well, do you have your PhD in clinical psychology? No. So it's like, okay, girl, what you doing? You want to counsel? You want to be this professional counselor? What you gonna do? So after doing some research, calling a few colleges, talking to a few professors, I found myself back in school working on this clinical mental health counseling degree. But by the time that I started doing that, I was working in a mental health rehab. I had left corporate America, took a $15,000 pay cut, and people thought I was crazy to go and pursue this. But I recognized and realized that that was what I was purposed and passionate to do. And so that's what I wanted to do. And
So,
so here I am.
okay, so because one of the things that I wrote down was what led you to leave the corporate setting. So was there a moment in time where you were just like, mm-mm. What was there a day you were at work and you're just sitting at your desk and it just hits you like, no, this ain't it? Or was it something that gradually happened over time?
So I would definitely say it happened gradually over time. Like I always knew that I wanted to help people. And I also knew that a part of me was doing it in that corporate America setting, right? There were Friday afternoons where my employees were able to shut everything down and they would just spend time in the office with me. I would treat them to Starbucks or, a snack or something, and we just talk. How's
Hmm.
things going? What's going on in your life? I didn't realize then that I was actually coaching in a certain way, but that was the most fulfilling for me. And so when I went on maternity leave after finishing my psychology degree, I had a lot of time to really rethink life and what I wanted to do next. And I'm like, I got this psychology degree, I have to use it. But again, that was before I knew that I was going to have to go back and get another one.
Okay. Okay. $15,000 pay cut. Most people don't have the courage to do that. Talk about that a little bit. You know,
Mm.
because I think that's important because you moved from one setting and into your purpose. And part of that I mean, that's stepping out on faith, taking a $15,000 pay cut. That's not the type of money sitting on the nightstand.
No, not to mention, Michael, I was a single mom. I had just had a new baby. I had two older kids and this new baby, and here I was tripping. My mama said, she was like, "Girl, what are you doing? How you gonna do that?" And I'll never forget sitting in the interview with this company, and one of the ladies, she had no filter. She was like, "Girl, are you crazy? You really gonna leave Acadian Ambulance to come work over here? I think you need to rethink this. I don't think you should do this." And I'm like, "But I want to do it." And I remember that first week, I was really in my feelings. I was in my head, like, this ain't gonna work. But I did know that I had an opportunity to go back if I needed to, right? But
Okay.
I told myself that you're not gonna go back. You're gonna just move forward. And it was a struggle for the first year, just getting readjusted, just getting acclimated to everything. But when I was in those sessions with those families, with those kids, and I remember on the way to a training one morning with my then supervisor, she was like, Do you ever think about going back? And I was like, I do, more than you would think, but I know that God got me. So I'm going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And I promise you, we were okay, to the point that within a year, I had transitioned to another form of therapy, which is multi-systemic therapy, MST therapy, where I was working more with at risk, truancy in the courts. And so that boosted my pay to more than what it was when I left corporate America.
Okay. That's good. That is a great testimony. Are you familiar with the concept of ikigai?
I've heard of it, yes.
Okay, and it's a Japanese philosophy, and it's basically like what you're passionate about, where you can help others. It's these four circles, and they all connect. Um, but that's what you found, so you found your passion where you can help others. Where one of them is you can get paid doing it, and I forget what the other one is. I probably need to do a little bit better job of knowing that, because I came across it years ago, and
Mhm.
then one of my podcast guests I had on, I guess a couple of months ago or so, mentioned it right in the interview, and then the next day it just kind of, I was scrolling through social media as I tend to do, and it kind of came through, and I was like, oh man, this is, this is it, so it kind of came back to me. But it really sounds like you are there, you are there, and making more money than you were before. That's good stuff, Sonya. Okay, Sonya, so you say that your practice is built on the premise of positive affirmations.
Yes.
What does that mean? Talk about that. Tell us what that's about.
So I was just sharing this story this past weekend when I had the opportunity to speak to some college students that's going to be incoming freshmen. And I was sharing with them how, probably my daughter is 23, so probably 10 years ago, if not a little bit longer than that, I sat in the room with a bunch of women, business owners, entrepreneurs, and the guest speaker was talking about affirmations. And she challenged us to write out 25 positive affirmations that we were going to speak over ourselves every day. I got to 5,
Yeah, I was
and I
gonna say that's a lot. Ooh.
that's a lot. Yes, I couldn't get past 5. And that did something to me, because I'm like, oh my God, like I should be able to, speak more positivity over myself, right? But I couldn't. And that just showed how, and I'm speaking for me, I'm not speaking for anybody else, how limited my mindset was at that time, when it came to, believing in myself, in my potential, in the power of I am. And so it wasn't until I began to really get back into the word and read God's word, and he says I am, right? And we know who he is, for those of us who are believers. And so when I got ready to do the paperwork for my business, and I was writing down all these different names. I had a list. I had even called my sister, my brother-in-law, my daughter, and I was like, I need a business name. And they came with many, but positively affirmed therapeutic services stuck out. And I'm sitting there one day and I'm like, okay, I need to figure out how I'm going to get a logo. And clearly it was presented to me, make sure when the logo comes out, I am sticks out, the shadow boxes, right? And I'm like, positively affirm, the power in positively affirming yourself every day. I am loved. I am strong. I am positive. I am whatever you're believing you become. And one of the things that I do, and it's interesting that we're talking about this, because I have my folder right here because I did some work this weekend. But this is one of the things that I do whenever I speak to young girls. I have them write in on this line here. their word they're going to use as their affirmation. So it says, I am, define who you are. Because ultimately, we have the power and the ability to define who we are through our affirmations.
That is so good. That is good. So I wrote down just in my notes, right, 25 affirmations because that's my project. I created I created my own little planner,
Okay.
and at the top of it, so I have my little to-do list, and then I have today's affirmation.
Mhm.
And I wasn't intentional about it because I didn't write an affirmation today.
Mm.
So I need to be intentional about that tomorrow. So let me pause here. Everybody listening and watching. Sonya is one of the contributing authors to the Reset anthology. So,
Mhm.
season 3 of Reset with Jay is on the Mogul. Nope, I mess it up every time. Yeah, that's right. The Mogul TV Global Network. So if you Google that, you can find it, and you can find Sonya along with the other authors and myself. And then the anthology will be out in September. So today, the day of this recording is August the 7th. So this episode should be out, should be available. So those of you watching and listening, y'all get ready to go and purchase that book, The Reset Anthology. You can hear more from Sonya and a bunch of other powerful authors, including myself and the visionary author, Chiquithia Prejean. So Reset with Jay on the Mogul TV Global Network. You can see Sonya there along with the rest of the Reset team, and then be on the lookout for the book, The Reset Anthology, um, by visionary author Chiquithia Prejean, including Sonya, Antoine, and myself, and 8 other very, very powerful authors. Okay, Sonya. So we were talking in Lafayette,
Yes.
and we were talking about grief. So I was telling you, hey, I need somebody to come on and talk about grief. So
Hmm.
I drew a line in my notes from
Okay.
affirmations to grief because
Hmm.
I'm wondering, do we struggle with the grief process because we don't know how to affirm ourselves?
Hmm. So I would definitely
Can I
say,
give you some context?
uh-huh.
All right. So this was so I wrote some questions, right?
Okay.
And this is question number 2, but we're gonna kind of jump over number 1. We're gonna come back to it. So I wrote
Okay.
this connection because my question number 2 was, is climbing in the casket grief? Like, so we sometimes we go to funerals, and it's a show, right? It's a show, and I'm not saying that to be negative or positive, but there's a lot of, there'll be wailing and crying, and then it's time, you're at the burial site, and it's tough. It's really, really, really tough. And
Hmm.
I've often wondered, like, we know that death is a part of life, it is going to happen. And I know people who to this day are struggling, like really, really struggling with losing people. So I'm wondering, and this is why I drew the arrow from affirmations to let's talk about grief. I'm wondering that, do I struggle with losing people because I don't know who I am? For example, I don't know if I'm capable of carrying on without you in my life. I don't know if I can stand on my own 2 feet and be okay with this loss. Is that
Hmm.
making sense?
It does.
Okay.
It does. And of course, I believe that a lot of times grief is not fully understood.
Okay. So good. Because my first question was, what is it? So now we made it to number 1. So, what is grief? Help us understand grief.
So, grief is the natural response to a loss, whether that be the loss of a loved one, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a job, the loss of a pet, the loss of a best friend, the loss of money. That's the natural response to things that we love once lost. And so what happens is we oftentimes don't connect the fact that our brain has to reset after we lose someone or something. And that can take a minute, right? Depending on how we're processing it, depending on
Hmm.
how we're affirming ourselves, right?
Okay.
Reminding ourselves that, yes, we lost this loved one, but we are going to get through this.
Right. I
It
am
may take
capable.
time, but I am capable. There are some people who experience a loss who feel like they can't go on. They don't know how to go on. And sometimes when that happens is because they're not connected or aligned with the right resources to help them to navigate through that loss, to help them to see that, yes, this does hurt. You will experience this. There's no timeline, there's no timetable. But with time, if you believe that you will heal and be able to eventually accept this loss for what it is, you will be able to. Life will look different though, right? Because that person, that loved one, that thing that you lost is no longer there. It will look different and it'll take time for the brain to reprocess that and say, "Oh, okay, this is the new norm."
Yeah.
But it can be done.
So you mentioned, some people who may struggle and not believe or know that they're capable. You mentioned that maybe they're not surrounded by the right resources. So what are some of the resources? So if I'm struggling with grief, what do I need? Where would you point me?
So of course, me being a counselor, I would say professional help, right? Off
Right.
the top of my head.
Hmm.
But for the average person who, may not be into counseling services, there's other resources available. They have grief recovery centers. They have here in Lafayette, they have the Faith House. I'm sorry, I mentioned the Faith House, the Grief House. Um, but there's resources available. I mean, we can get on the internet right now and we can search up grief, and there's tons of information. There's tons of resources out there. So whether you're reaching out to someone like myself who's a professional counselor, or even someone who's a certified life coach, because they do have certified grief coaches now. There's people out there that's equipped. You also have individuals who can go to their pastors, for support and guidance during these times, or someone that you trust, a confidant. But definitely tapping into whatever resources may be available to you to help you to get to that next place
That's good.
of healing.
That's really, really good. So this brings us to question number three. So, and I want to be specific to, the African American community. So in the African American community with black folks, what
Mhm.
does grief look like? Just in general, how do we see grief manifesting? Does it manifest different among men and women? Does it manifest different amongst different age groups?
So, of course, everybody processes grief differently.
Hmm.
You have some people who are like, okay, this happened, I need to move on. You have some, this happened, I can't move on. For some, it can look like sadness, it can look like anger, it could look like loneliness, it could be a mixture of painful emotions. It could look like complete shutdown, silence. I don't want to talk, I don't want to be bothered. It can show up in so many different ways because we're different. Our makeup is different. So how we think, how we process, how we act following a loss is just going to look different.
That's good. And I want people, if you're watching or listening, if you're grieving, or if you're around people who are grieving, make room for that grief, and then look for, some of those signs that Sonya is pointing out, and be supportive. And then if you know you need professional help, go ahead and get that professional help. um because you said some people will go to their pastor, but I want to point out that you want to make sure, even if you're going to your pastor, that your pastor can point you to more resources if you need more resources. Because not all pastors may be licensed counselors, right? They may be good at biblical counseling, but that their strong point may not be grief counseling. Sonya, that's good stuff right there. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, it's commercial time. So listen, if you are listening to this podcast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it may be, I want you to like it, share it. I don't know if you can subscribe. Well, you can subscribe to podcasts. So especially if you're on Apple, give us those 5 stars. I definitely love you because you gave us that 5-star rating. I am speaking that into existence. Okay. And if you're watching on YouTube, so hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe, and then there's that little bell that gives you notifications. So every time a new episode drops, you'll be notified. So if y'all do those things, like, subscribe, share, get the notification, give us a thumbs up, give us the 5 stars. We greatly appreciate it. Okay, Sonya, we are getting ready to pivot into the exit ticket. Are you ready for this?
I am.
Okay. All right. So let me tell you how the exit ticket works. So it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So the 5 is the Furious 5. It's actually going to be a little bit more than 5, but it's kind of rapid fire. So I'm going to ask you 5 random questions in between 2 bookend questions. So I'm going to have bookend question number 1. After you answer that question, I'll start the timer. We'll go 30 seconds. I'll throw as many questions at you as I can in those 30 seconds. When the timer goes off, I'll hit you with the other bookend question. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
All right. So here is the first question. Let me get my timer ready. My phone is way across the room. I can't reach it. So let me use my watch. All right. Here's the first question. I'm putting 30 seconds on the clock, but remember, it doesn't start until you answer this first question.
Okay.
The first question: if you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
To be invisible.
Ah,
Just
okay. Why?
the idea of being able to show up and no one even knows that I'm present.
Ah, okay. Okay. All right. I'm getting ready to start the timer. Here we go.
Okay.
What would you sell on Shark Tank?
Oh my goodness. And I love Shark Tank. Well, I don't know what I would sell. I just be listening for the advice. Oh my God, I
Okay,
love
we're
it.
gonna come back to that one. What's the last book you read?
Jump.
Have you ever gotten a speeding ticket?
Oh my God, yes, but are we not talking about it because I don't want karma to come back?
Okay. You sing karaoke?
Oof, with my children.
Okay. Are you afraid of the dark?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay. All right.
I
So the
sleep with
ti-
the
the
on.
timer went off. The timer went off. So I got to come back to that question. All right. And then I'm going to ask you the bookend question. So if you had to create a product or whatever, make a product better that you would sell on Shark Tank. And I came up with that question because I saw that you love Shark Tank, so that's why I added that question. All right, so what would you sell on Shark Tank?
I would probably sell a device that allows you to tune out your kids.
Ooh, ooh, yeah, that would be good.
That would
That
be real good.
yeah, that'd be real good. Like, and have some Bluetooth connectivity and all of that. Just that'd be good. Okay, all right. Here's the here's the other bookend question. Do you have your own Netflix account or do you use someone else's?
I got my own, and they be trying to borrow mine.
Okay. All right. That's good stuff. All right. So that wasn't too bad, was it?
Wasn't too bad.
All right, so that was the Furious Five. So that brings us to the Funky Four. This is what the podcast is about. All right, the Funky Four. We call these the Funky Four Corners of Life. The best
Mhm.
advice that you have received in the following areas: physically, mentally, spiritually, and financially. So, what is the best physical advice that you have ever received?
Taking care of yourself because you can't pour from an empty cup. And if you don't do it, your body will force you to do it.
Ah, that's right. That's right. All right, physically, mentally. What is the best mental health advice you have ever received?
It's okay not to be okay because you're not superwoman and you need to take care of your mental health.
Why is that so hard for us to understand that it's okay to not be okay? What's the hurdle there? What do you think the hurdle is for many of us, men and women, women and men?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with us as a people, especially as an African American black female. You know, we're supposed to just get it done, right? Get it done. Um, don't matter how you feel, you still got to show up. You still got
Yeah,
to show up. And so, the biggest thing that I see and I know is that the stigma exists around mental health. Within our community, because for so long, you don't go and ask for help. You don't go and you don't talk to people about your business. You leave it here. You pray about it, and so going see a therapist is not the commonality in our community, but we're
yeah.
breaking the stigma one day at a time.
We are. We are. We're breaking the stigma. These are the breaks. So see, we made it full circle right there. So
Mhm.
before we go to spiritual, before we go to spiritual, I was thinking about this while you were talking. So, in the African American community, there's this stigma. There has been this stigma. We're slowly breaking it. We're slowly breaking it about mental health. But then when I think about where the African American community is rooted spiritually, which has been the African American church, right?
Mhm.
And so then we go to the Bible. The Bible talks about talking. The Bible talks about that. So I wonder, oh my goodness, now I got to do like this whole Bible study, that deals with because the passage of scripture I'm thinking about is where it says confess your sins to one another, right?
Mhm.
And then tied to that, where it says lay aside every weight and sin that will so easily beset you, right? So like what does that look like? Well, that can look like talking to people. That can look like, getting some things off your chest.
Mhm.
But then there was this stigma that existed around that. That's
Mhm.
so interesting. That's so interesting. I don't know. Let me not get too far off track because I like my brain is in a rabbit hole somewhere. All right. So that was physically, mentally. What is the best spiritual advice that you've been given?
Hmm. My mom and my grandmother's no longer here, but my mom and my grandmother always told us, put God first. You may not always understand what he's doing, but he'll always come through. He's always on time.
That's it. That's it. All right. Physically, mentally, spiritually, and financially. Give us the best financial advice that you have received.
So, graduated from high school, and my grandmother's sister pulled me to the side and she said, I don't care what you do, but you put $25 a paycheck on the side. And she said, it might not seem like a lot, but eventually it's going to add up. And if you ever need it for a rainy day, you'll have it.
Good job. That's good advice. That's good
Hmm.
stuff. All right. So that was the Furious Five and the Funky Four. So this brings us to three recommendations, Sonya. So give us one book, one song, and one podcast that has been life changing for you.
So, Steve Harvey's book, Jump, that was awesome. That's an awesome read. So if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. My
Okay.
song, oh my God. See, That's a hard one for me because I'm not sure if you're familiar with Pastor Mike Jr.
I
But
am.
his have you listened to Impossible, his new album?
I have not, but you are the second guest in the last three recordings that has mentioned a song by Pastor Mike Jr.
Yes. So his whole album is awesome. I mean, he just won 8 Stellar Awards. But the one song that stands out for me is One Prayer that he has featuring Tamala Man. And that song right there, every time I listen to it, it brings me to tears because, of course, as we're in the midst of our reset journey, I'm just believing one prayer away.
That's it. That's it. Listen. So for those of y'all who are listening, I'm taking all of the songs that our guests are recommending and I'm compiling a playlist. It's an Apple. It's an Apple podcast. Now, let me give y'all a fair warning. Kind of like the Breakfast Club, it's 50% righteous and it's 50% ratchet. So just letting y'all know because not everybody recommends, you know, spiritual or faith music. Some people, you know. All right. So one podcast, Sonya, one podcast for us.
One podcast I would highly recommend is Therapy for Black Girls, and that's by Dr. Joy Harden Bradford. She is out of Atlanta, Georgia. And listen, if there's some information that you missed along the way, just regarding anything and everything, but more specifically mental health, that podcast is very resourceful.
Okay. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, Sonya, this brings us to the two do's. Give us two do's in the next 90 days, 6 months, or the next year. What do you have for us?
Huh. Well, to obtain licensure in another state, and that actually, I officially got my license in the mail this morning.
Good
Yes,
stuff. That's good stuff right there. So we can scratch that one off the list. That one's done. That
list.
one is
Yes.
done. All right. What else you got?
Next 6 months to a year, I am working on becoming an evidence-based practitioner in two more practice models. Um, Trauma focused CBT, and that helps with the young population, our youth, being able to overcome the trauma that they've experienced. And it's something that I've always wanted to do on this journey. So I'm working on that and also becoming a trust based relational interventionist, and being able to practice that. And it's also dealing with trauma, but helping the more vulnerable side of our children to become more just in tune with who they are, and understanding that they too can work through their trauma, if they just connect with the right person that is willing to take a different approach.
That's good. I wonder. So dealing with trauma, recognizing trauma, and then learning how to cope with it's reaching down into younger ages, right?
Mhm.
So I wonder what are the residual effects of unresolved trauma? Is there research out there about that?
There is.
What does it say? What does that research say? What are the residual or long-term effects? Like, well, really both. And I'm not going to say or. What are the long-term effects? For somebody who's dealing with unresolved trauma, and then what are the residual effects? And the image that comes to mind is the character that Denzel Washington played in Fences.
Mhm.
That, I see that as as that character having unresolved trauma, and
Mhm.
then the residual effects of that unresolved trauma trickling down to his family.
Mhm. So when you think about it, the unresolved trauma can and will most often trickle down, right? So think about the intergenerational trauma that's passed on, within families, because it's not something that they've taken into consideration or considered doing anything about. But more specifically, you have those kids who are maybe experiencing trauma in the home, and then they show up at school, and for whatever reason, they fall asleep in the class, and the teacher tries to wake the child up, and then the child wakes up screaming, arms flying, ready to fight. That's a behavior issue, yes, but what's the root of that?
Mm-hmm.
That could be an extension of what they just dealt with at home. And they couldn't sleep the night before, and the only place they could get some sleep was in that classroom, and then you disturb that sleep, and all they know to do is, in whatever way, fashion, or form, protect themselves from what could possibly be a threat, or what they perceive as a threat, because they haven't been able to really deal with it in the
Yeah.
set of their home environment. And so, there's kids out here living with a lot of trauma on so many different spectrums, and it affects how they communicate with other people. It affects how they show up in relationships with other people. It shows up in how they take care of themselves or not. So,
That's real. That is so real because so trauma is, the trauma education is required training for us now. I'm an educator, so in the high school public school setting, and that
mhm,
trauma education is now that's required for us. And I'm sure adults are probably seeing like, oh my goodness, I got some trauma too, right? So that's good stuff, man. We could talk about that all day. That is so interesting to me because more than anything, I want us to heal.
absolutely.
I want us to heal, and I want us to help others heal, and I want us to heal together. I
Mhm.
want us to walk with people while they heal. And let me say this. This is for men and women, but especially brothers. So men are hiding. Men are hiding. And that's all I'm gonna say. Men are hiding for many, many different reasons, but I need men to come out of hiding so that men can heal. So that there's gonna be more on that later. More on that later. But men, brothers, I need y'all to stop hiding, man. I know why you're hiding. There's a lot of reasons why you're hiding, but we got to come out of hiding so we can heal. Okay, Sonya, that was the 5, the 4, the 3, and the 2 with all kind of other conversations mixed in. But this brings us to the 1. We are now down to the end of this episode. We are at one piece of unsolicited advice. Nobody asked you for this, but you're going to share it with us anyway. So, what do you have for this segment that was formerly titled You Didn't Ask?
I would say be mindful of how you show up for others and how you make them feel, because sometimes they don't need or want your thoughts and or opinions. What they really need and want is your ear, your shoulder, and or your support.
Listen, Sonya, look, let me put this. Y'all see that highlighted right there? I highlighted that because when I read that, I was like, ooh, listen, it was for me, but it was also for some people around me. Sometimes they don't want or need your thoughts and or opinions. Sometimes they really just need your ear, your shoulder, and your support. Sonya, that is so good. That is so good. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing with us today. Listen, everybody, this is the network. We've got one goal here. All right, is to help our community physically, mentally, spiritually, and financially. Thank you for listening or watching today. We were in here breaking stuff up. We're breaking up the trauma. All right, we're breaking up the trauma. We're breaking up the grief. We pointed you to some professional resources, to some people and some things that can help you. And the last thing Sonya told us, I got to say it again, just in case you didn't hear it. Sometimes people don't want or need your thoughts and opinions. So, shh. Sometimes what they really need and want is your ear, your shoulder, and your support. Sonya, thank you so much for gracing us today on the network. You blessed me for one, and I know people who watch and listen will be blessed as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. Y'all know what we say before we get out of here. Until next time, y'all make love the culture. Peace.